Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition. This is already number 7, another edition of Data Jazzers live from Redmond. Usual suspects, Jay, our co-host, and myself today. We are still waiting for Augustine. Maybe he will join. But yeah, we are blessed to have today a special guest from Microsoft, Lauren Faber. Did I pronounce it properly? Or
Yeah,
okay, awesome,
nailed it.
awesome, cool. Thank you guys for joining, and it's great to having you on our live stream.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Nicola, and thanks for allowing me to co-host with you again. And of course, thanks for Lauren for joining this time around. It's exciting to have you here as well. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about whatever we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, thanks for letting me join. This is my first official live stream, I think maybe ever. So I'm excited, probably a little bit nervous, but excited to be here.
No need to be nervous. You should be nervous if you had a spreadsheet for that, but
Okay, Jay's got the spreadsheet for me.
Yeah. Maybe as an icebreaker to start with a gentle introduction. Lauren, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your current role within Power BI team before we jump into the action, talking about real stuff that's happening on your side?
Absolutely, I would love to. So yeah, a little bit about me and my current role, and a little bit of history and background as well. I've been with Microsoft for a little over 4 years now. When I originally joined, I came in on the Power BI CAT team, mostly running customer stories. And there's a lot of different ways that we gather feedback from our customers. And one of those ways is through a enterprise program that we have called Enterprise Voice, which is a NDA invite only program. And I worked a lot with that program of running it, working with customers to get feedback, doing different customer feedback sessions. And that was a really great experience. I loved being on that team. I worked with amazing, awesome people. But a lot of my role, most of my role was gathering the feedback and understanding what customers needed, what their challenges were, and what they needed prioritized, and then passing that information on to the Power BI product side for the product managers to then go and work with their teams to build. So in earlier this year, I switched over to the product side because I wanted to be able to be the person putting those feedback into action. I spent so long like being able to hear from customers, this is what we want, these are the challenges that we have, but there was never really anything I could do about it other than just relay that message to the product team. So it's very exciting for me now to be on the product side and be able to take what I learned from being on that team of listening to customers, getting the feedback, and actually see it in action. That's been really, really awesome for me to be able to ship things and add things to the product and work with the engineers to actually build the things that I've been hearing about for so long. So my role now that I have moved over is a product manager on Power BI, specifically working with OneDrive and SharePoint integrations. Now that's only like a subset of what I'm working on. There's other things that we have in the works as well. So stay tuned, keep looking for my name as I continue to announce more exciting upcoming features that I can't get too much into yet.
Don't spill it yet. Don't spill it.
Yes. So stay tuned. They're coming. But one of the big areas that I am owning right now is that integration with OneDrive and SharePoint.
Yeah.
And there's a lot there that I'm sure we can go into on the live stream around some of the strategies that we're thinking of. But I think it's an exciting place to be. And I think there's so much potential for us to be able to solve challenges with the integrations that I'm working on that we've been hearing customers have for a long time.
And I mean, it's good that you're here, right? Because you bring the knowledge of like actually working with customers. Sometimes I wish that, all of our PMs had that like direct exposure to our customers, because it just makes somehow when you've been in those kind of roles, customer facing, it just gives you some kind of like built-in capability of deciding what the right answer is by being able to put yourselves in their shoes, right?
Facing reality, yeah.
Yeah, I know you, for example, Nicola, have the same, right? You look at a feature that we're building, and you go like, well, I immediately can see how users, my customer XYZ would use this, or why they would not use it, and that's, as a product manager, that's an invaluable skill. So Lauren brings that because, well, she learned that on the cat team by being exposed with all that. And now, yeah, as she said, she's now putting that into practice by actually putting the money where the okay,
And yeah, what I
I
wanted
know
to
what there is to fix. Let me go fix it and let me go improve it. So yeah, I'm excited that she's on the team now.
Yeah. And what I wanted also to point out, and Lorian, you mentioned it. So SharePoint, I think it's the area that has a great potential when it comes to integration with Power BI. I mean, it looks at least from outside, that this side of Power BI, this side of integration between Power BI and SharePoint, maybe didn't get deserved attention so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and honestly, I do think that I kind of am the right person to be working on this area, because I didn't come into Power BI with like a huge technical background in BI, which I think a lot of people have. And I came in more as that like new user who was unfamiliar with the product. And so from that lens, I think I saw a lot of the areas where Power BI has opportunity to grow. And I think that SharePoint and OneDrive is completely one of those areas, because it's taking this space where a lot of customers and business users are really familiar with how Office products work. And Power BI is like a completely different beast. And I think for a lot of the more advanced authors and analysts, it's great in so many ways, but I think it can be a struggle for those who are new into the area. And I feel like this space that we have with OneDrive and SharePoint kind of meets that need, and will continue to meet the need as we continue to invest in it, in helping get more business users and people who maybe feel a little bit overwhelmed with Power BI to have a more like familiar experience that's easier for them to get started with the product and stay in the product. And so I'm really excited about some of the other Office product capabilities that we're going to be able to bring to Power BI.
Yeah, thanks for that. And from your experience so far, what is the biggest barrier that business users are facing with Power BI when it comes to this perspective? Okay, OneDrive and SharePoint users, this experience with Office products, what is the biggest barrier in your opinion?
Yeah, so there's like two. I know you said one, but there's two different ones I think that really come to mind. The first is just discoverability and awareness of the product. I think a lot of people don't even realize that Power BI is out there and is usable for them. And kind of what goes along with that, I think, is just how overwhelming it can be at first. Like you get into Power BI and you see this button at the top that says publish. And when you're a new user, you have no idea the implications of what that means. You're thinking, okay, if I publish this, like, is everyone in my org going to get a notification? Am I going to get in trouble because I like put it somewhere that it's not supposed to? There's
Yeah.
some of these fears that are overwhelming when you first open it. And I think that's one of the big barriers, is you feel like it's this product that feels pretty foreign to how a lot of the other Office products are. There's this whole different service and area that you have to learn and go to that feels like when I first started, I almost felt like I wasn't allowed to be in the service. Like that was a special place reserved for people who like knew more what they were doing than I did.
Some nerds.
Yeah. No, but like just people who had, bigger paychecks than I did. And so it's really, really overwhelming at first for me to understand even some of the languages or language wording that was different within Power BI. And to me, that's the biggest hurdle today. Is like you get into an Excel file, it feels familiar. You understand how to share, you understand what it means to save as, you understand kind of what you're getting. But with Power BI, it's just so overwhelming. And I think a lot of new starters, they don't want to do it wrong because you're working with data and that can feel scary and overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And so I think really simplifying the experience, making it less scary and making it more clear to users that they're on the right track, like some kind of indication of like, hey, you're doing this right,
Yeah, good point by Kurt. Hey Kurt, good to see you here. It's a difficult challenge, especially when someone goes from this is just a data visualization tool, nice shiny charts, and then realizing what all the other aspects individual has to learn. Yeah.
I mean, they see the nice, like, beautiful whatever car, let's say, right? And then they open up the hood and go like,
Whoa.
okay, you expect me to know all that? Be able to operate all that. So yeah, there's lots of room for improvement here. And I like the way, Lauren, you just expressed that. Like, you think about like how, people are coming in from the office world where they have some certain expectations, a certain way of working, some things they know and understand. How do we bring that kind of working model towards Power BI without sacrificing everything that we built, right? Like, how do we bring these two things together? Because, we really want to grow. We want to grow our audience. We want to make it easier for everybody who is involved, especially for people who are just onboarding. So how do we like bring these two worlds together without like, sacrificing one for the other, right? And I think that's the core challenge that Lauren is working on.
Yeah.
I don't want to jump the gun too much on like the actual features that have been released in the latest desktop, but one of those areas, for example, is like with sharing. Like it's very easy to share a PowerPoint or to share an Excel file, but previous to what my team has been working on, in order to share an actual view of a report, you had to download the desktop app, you had to publish it to the service, you had to go to the service in order to share. And that experience that was 1 or 2 clicks in Office with our other products didn't exist in Power BI. And so one of the improvements that we've made is being able to have that sharing capability much more accessible and easier in Power BI desktop, the same way it is in other Office products.
And as you said, like, the service felt very scary. It's like, what am I actually publishing? What am I publishing my data to the whole world? No. Okay, what am I doing here? So, that felt very scary. Under the covers, our sharing is kind of still the same, but at least it's easier now and more consistent with our Office experiences. And I think, the longer Lauren is on our team, the more of that kind of stuff is coming towards all of you, and we'll make that life just easier and make that life like easier to understand and easier to follow and onboard. So yeah, it's all good news.
Yeah, we have a question from Kurt for you, Lauren. What was your approach to collecting customer feedback, and how do you think that's most effectively done?
So this is a great question. One I am very passionate about. I love gathering customer feedback, and honestly, like, I don't mean this in a cheesy way. One of the things I really love about working at Microsoft is that focus on listening to our customers. And so it was really awesome to be on a team for so long where that was our main focus. And the customer voice program was a big aspect of what I did. And now on the product side, it's definitely not the only place that we get our feedback. Like, we are on, the Ideas website, the in-product feedback that y'all are giving when you're in the app. Like, we look at all of those places when making our decisions on what to prioritize and move forward. But something that was really special about the customer voice program and the approach to getting that customer feedback was I got to do a lot of research and studying on best practices for getting customer feedback. There's this book that the team uses a lot called the Customer Driven Playbook. And it kind of goes step by step of what it takes to build a product and the different stages of working with your customers. Your classic things like ways to ask questions when you're working with customers, that you're not leading them to the answer that you want, and you are solving for their challenges rather than asking them to come up with the solution for you, things like that. But all in all, I think that one of the big things when it comes to customer feedback is really understanding the challenges that a customer is facing without trying to solve that problem for them. I think that some of the mistakes that I've seen when people are getting customer feedback is trying to say like, oh yeah, that's not going to be a problem because we've solved that for you. So as a product manager, the approach I try to take is I don't probably have the solution right away for what you're saying, but I really need to listen and understand not just what you're saying to me in that moment, but the bigger picture. Like, you might say something to me about like this, DAX is hard, right? And that can be true, but what's the reasoning behind that? Like, what does DAX being hard keep you as a customer from being able to achieve? What are your end goals that you're trying to reach? And what are the challenges that you have along the way blocking you from being able to achieve in your business? So I think it's looking at the customer feedback as its own piece, but also as the bigger picture as well. And then understanding the levels of that might be a challenge for you in the overall picture. How big of a challenge is it for you, right? Like, how does that compare to the other challenges that you have? And I think that working on this side, like that can be really hard to look at the information and try and understand the weight that each problem customers are giving us really have. So a really long answer, I think, but there's a couple of like specific practices that I personally try and follow, but really it comes down to listening without trying to solve the problem in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I recognize that as a challenge, right? We're all very busy. We have multiple balls in the air as product managers. So it's easy to go, not listen and instead jump to conclusions to what the customer is actually talking about and say, no, I already solved it, or we'll solve it with this and this feature coming soon, trademark, right? And that is just something that happens. I mean, I do the same, and that's just not because I don't want to listen, but sometimes I don't give myself the time to listen and actually try to really understand what's going on, and instead just shoot from the hip, right? So that is it's a pitfall. It's a challenge that we have on the product. I think anybody working at Microsoft recognizes the same challenge. It's like we're all very busy. We all have to decide stuff quickly. Things need to keep moving. Our community expects us to ship stuff every month, right, or every week sometimes. So we simply don't give ourselves the time sometimes to listen deeply. So yeah, I mean, as I said earlier as well, I think it's very beneficial to have somebody who did that and is actually like passionate about us learning to listen better instead of shooting from the hip all the time. And then social media doesn't help to enable this, right? Social media is definitely more like shoot from the hip and move on, right? So yeah, interesting challenges here. But yeah, definitely the listening part is something that I recognize we as a product can do better.
Yeah, you both gave amazing answers, as it was also a perfect introduction to my next question. So, Jay, you already answered multiple times this one, but for Lorena, I would like to hear from her experience. How do you prioritize all these requests? So you listen to customers. So I suppose you listen to a huge customer. Then you maybe have a specific request for that one huge customer. Then you have another request from multiple smaller customers. Then you have community that pushes for certain features. So how do you balance all of these things? How do you make these trade-offs? Okay, now we are focusing on working on this, and next month that, and so on.
Yeah, it's a great question, which it sounds like has been asked and answered on this live stream before. And I think probably because there's no one right answer to it, and each product manager approaches it very differently.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the
remark
from Power BI.
No worries. But that's the golden question, right? Like, I think that figuring out how to prioritize what is at the core of being successful in the product manager role.
Right.
So I'm sure everyone's heard about like the different methods in which we gather that customer feedback. Like I mentioned before, we have our different community sites, the in-product feedback, actually meeting one-on-one with customers, the enterprise voice program I talked about, which reaches a lot of some of our biggest enterprise customers. But we also look at the data to see how people are actually using our product, because sometimes the feedback we're getting doesn't always match up with we're actually seeing, where people get stuck in the product, or where the highest entry point is for them. So I think it's really figuring out and synthesizing the amount of feedback we're getting, what we're getting, and then also thinking about the longer term strategy of the product as well. So sometimes there might be feedback that's like, hey, you should solve this problem, but long term, like we might be moving away from this area because we're solving for it in a different way our customers don't even know is coming up, right? So trying to meet the business need and strategy with what we're hearing from customers to, in the end, deliver the right solution that's going to allow everyone to be more effective with their data every day. And that might kind of feel like a very hand-wavy answer, but I honestly kind of feel like it's a hand wavy process. Like there's no one way that we figure out how to prioritize.
Right.
But the more feedback we get from all of you out there, from our customers, like the one thing that I do promise is that in Microsoft, we are looking and we are listening, and we really do see the feedback that you're giving us, and we talk about it, we discuss it, we prioritize with it. So the more feedback that you're giving us, like we are looking and we are listening. So continue to give that feedback, and you really do help shape the roadmap. Like that is how we figure out how to prioritize, is based off of what we're hearing from customers, the data that we're seeing, and achieving our long-term strategy goals.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so now to jump a little bit into the action, this October update, which is still hot off the press, I think you should be flattered because this is one of the coolest updates recently. New model view, calculation groups, and so on. And we chose this feature, Power BI Desktop, OneDrive, and the SharePoint integration. Can you tell us a little bit more about this feature specifically, and how it can benefit Power BI users?
Absolutely. And Nicola, you're right. I am very flattered to be here. Like when Jay asked you to come on, I was like, oh my gosh, absolutely. Like very, very excited to be a part of this live stream, because there are a lot of really cool and exciting things coming out with this release. So with OneDrive and SharePoint integrations with Power BI, what you'll see in desktop this month is honestly like pretty straightforward. It's just the ability to save, open, and share files into OneDrive and SharePoint document libraries directly from Power BI Desktop. Now, the complement to that is that we also have released in public preview, but it is actually on by default in tenants around the world, the ability to also, if you have a report that is saved in your OneDrive or SharePoint document libraries, previously, if you went to go click on that file, you would always be directed to download that file and view it in desktop. So anytime you wanted to just like see your information, you either needed to go to the service to do it or go through a lot of steps. And we have made it so that you can now view those files directly in your browser from your OneDrive and SharePoint document libraries, which is very exciting. But to be honest, I think it's exciting because of the foundation that it lays for what we want to do next. So a lot of the feedback that we get from customers around certain things that they want to be easier in Power BI, what we are launching and releasing with OneDrive and SharePoint and Desktop is the start of all of those things. So
which certain things?
I'm like, how much I can say.
I'm trying to,
I will say that we know
surprise effect. Yeah.
I think I could say this. We know that collaborating, like creating reports together as authors, is a big challenge for people. And OneDrive and SharePoint is a really great opportunity to help solve some of those collaborative challenges that we've had in Power BI for a long time. And so, like I said, this is really laying the foundation for some of those other elements that I think are going to be really exciting. But even the foundation itself, I still think is really exciting. Like, you could, if you had it set up on your device through your file explorer, you could save to OneDrive, you could open from OneDrive, but we're really making it very obvious so that for your users who maybe don't know that that capability was available or didn't have it set up, they're now able to save their documents directly to the cloud. So they always have a backup of it. It makes it a lot easier to collaborate and share, especially if you're in the stages of creating the report, or maybe you have more ad hoc reporting scenarios where publishing to the service isn't necessarily what you need for throwing a report together for like a leadership presentation that you have. So even though this is the foundation, I think the foundation is still also very exciting.
Yeah, and I love this about how we built Power BI, and I think it's clear that all of our product managers do it this way, right? We're showing the building blocks and showing the foundation publicly, and from there we're going to build on a house, right? So from my world, the window functions are a great example, right? Nobody understood why we were building them until we unveiled that actually on top of that, we're building this whole foundation, like this whole house of visual calcs. And now people go like, oh, now I understand. So think about what we just released with the OneDrive and SharePoint integration as that same foundation of a house that we're building on top of that, which might have multiple stories. That's all up to Lauren to decide. If it's like 1 level or 2 level or a full skyscraper, we'll get there. But think about this as not the end state. This is just a starting point, which in itself is already very useful, but then should also give you some kind of like understanding and insight into where our future is headed, right? Okay, so this is the foundation. What else can we do with this once we start putting these ingredients together? So yeah, without wanting to tell or break our NDA or tell too much, you can literally just walk up to our foundations and start imagining from there, right? And probably you have a pretty good picture of where we're headed with this.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. So sometimes we are not aware of these small starting things that make our lives so much easier. So until we get it. So yeah, thanks for doing that. Yeah.
Yep. It's exciting. I mean, it's all about making it easier, and that's also the vibe that I'm getting from like, if I look back at all the things that we're working on now, and coming in the future, like if I look at all across the product, the vibe right now is not so much about building net new, completely new functionality. It's more about, okay, we have a good understanding of the things that people need to be successful using Power BI, but there's loads of holes and loads of things that are not as easy as they could be. How do we make this easier, right? And Lauren's work is a great example for that. Other stuff that's coming, which I won't mention, is a great example of that. Visual Calcs is a good example of that. There's so much. So the focus now on the team is really about, okay, let's make this easier. I think we said it at the Power Platform Conference as well, like we're trying to become the PowerPoint for data. And that is really where this all falls. So it's like, how do we make it as easy? Because PowerPoint, Excel, I mean, of course, people use other tools, obviously, but many people, when they need to build slides and they want to show a slide, they take PowerPoint, right? It's like, it's there. That's the tool. We want to be that tool for if you want to analyze some data, right? You want to build a chart, you want to build a dashboard, you want to build a report. Power BI should be the tool you think about, and it feels like a warm bath and making it easy. And that's really our investment area for this particular group of features. That doesn't mean that we're not investing in powerful technology for innovation as well. I mean, we're just talking about a slice of where we're investing today, but it's really exciting to see that there's loads of people now thinking about how do we make stuff easier instead of just somebody trying to make stuff easier. Now, across the board, we have a whole group of people thinking about how can we make Power BI easier to use.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. That was great answer. We are slowly running out of time, so one last question for Loren. This one is the most important, so please think twice before you answer.
I don't have to answer again, right? I already answered it multiple times, so I'm out of
feel free if you change your mind in the meantime. Yeah, just feel free. What is your number one missing feature in Power BI?
Yeah, okay, great question. This is fun to answer because when I was on the CAT team previously, we would do in detailed interviews with customers, and that was also the last question we would ask them. What is their number one missing feature? So I think it's pretty obvious that I'm very passionate about making Power BI a place that's easy for new users to be, because that's where I was. So that's why I am passionate about it. And it was a very overwhelming experience for me personally. So I think for me, what would be amazing, like blue sky, is some sort of wizard in Power BI that helps users at each stage that they're at. So almost like persona based of, you could turn it on and off. So like if it's not for you, you can turn it off, but like you get into it and it's almost like this magical thing that's helping you to create your reports or even consume in a way that's best for you along the way.
Out-to-date time, for example.
Sorry?
Out-to-date time. Like out-to-date time.
Yes, exactly. I think I mean more in like the way of, it should almost be like hard for a new user to not create a beautiful report on their first time. Like they should have to work hard to not be able to get value from Power BI from the first time they open it to the first report that they create. And that can look like things like, oh, I see that this is your first time like coming into Power BI. Here's this wizard to help you. This is what publish means. This is what you're going to want to do with, this is how you get data in, like in the first place. Oh, you're looking to make this kind of report, get data from here. Oh, you've got your data in based on the data that you've brought in, and you maybe have it understands like what kind of goal you want to get to. These are the type of reports we suggest, like a bar chart versus a map visual, and almost being able to help a user along the way get to where they need to go. And then as you're an advanced user, maybe it's more saying like, like you could really optimize your data model and increase your performance with this thing. And I think just like these different points along the way to help users, and not just necessarily like the first time you sign on, not just oh, you're new, here's your first trial, but something that would be with you the whole time that you're working with Power BI to continually help enforce those best practices. Because what we have heard constantly from customers is best practices might be documented somewhere, they might be there, but getting users to actually follow best practices is very, very difficult. So how do we build it into the product to make it hard for people not to follow best practices? And I think something like that would be amazing to build into the product. So regardless of where you are in your Power BI journey, you have help and assistance to always be getting better and to always be following those best practices.
So something like Copilot for Power BI.
Something that would help you be able to follow best practices.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a Copilot per se, right?
Yeah.
It could be as simple as a button that just allows you to check your work or like sits on the side, right? I mean, when people like Copilot's all the rage, right? And then it's like, oh, natural language. But is that really the interface that people want for this? Or should it just be something that I can just interact with, or it's just automatically there without being annoying, right? And I think that's a very interesting challenge. Is like, we're not in this business to create another Clippy, right? We're trying to guide you and help you, but I don't know if I'm carbonating myself here, but if you remember Microsoft Bob, which is an old-timey tool before Clippy even existed, which was so annoying because it was guiding you all the time, because there was no way to tell it not to guide you. Like, you were trying to write an email, and every time we say, oh, you're trying to write an email. An email is an electronic way of doing, you don't need a stamp. It's for free, blah, blah, blah. You only need somebody's address, which looks like this. Do you want to write an email now? And like after the 20th time, you go like, please, I want to write an email. I know what I'm doing. That is going to be the interesting thing with Copilot, but also with other interfaces. Like, how do we get to the point where we're helping, we're also not an annoying helper, right? So how do we give you the guardrails, but also allow you to step out of the guardrails really easily and without becoming it? And that's a challenge for a product, for Copilot interface or whatever else we're building.
I really like how Kurt put it in the chat, like explained it well of what I was trying to say. An actionable, personable guidance with an assistant that can be engaged with natural language. And I think even giving organizations the ability to customize those best practices too, right? Yep. Like they might have a specific way that they want their users to be creating reports, or templates they want them to be using, or like organizational themes, or hey, when you publish it, this is the way that you publish it. So I think creating both best practices just in terms of like BI best practices, and then also per organization being able to help users use Power BI in the way that is going to be most effective in your organization.
Right. Yeah. And that's going to be a big challenge. So it's not one feature, I think. It's going to be a very interesting overhaul and improvements of our products across the board. So yeah, it's exciting. I'm glad you gave that answer.
Exciting times in front of us, yeah.
It seems like we're always ending at like exciting times. It's like seems to be a recurring pattern here. So
Marty never stops.
Like, yeah, there's loads of interesting and cool stuff coming. But yeah, I'm glad that we're focusing on making things easier and giving people more guardrails and trying to help them land more softly without them having to deal with all the complexity that the power of Power BI comes with, right? And how do we hide that from you for a little while if you want it to be hidden for a little while? So yeah, not taking away the complexity, because complexity gives flexibility and power, but how do we postpone that thing, right? Like I think I've said in Visual Calc's world, fattening the donut, right? Trying to allow you to walk on the happy path of the donut on the rim, instead of like dealing with the infinite complexity that's inside of the center of the donut, and the hole is where Calculate lives. The same thing applies to everything else that we're doing in Power BI. Like, how do we make that easier?
Yeah, and slowly wrapping up. Thank you very much, Laurent. You were great. Thank you so much for joining us, and we all looking forward to see what you and your team will build in the next few months. And if you have something exciting to share, you are very welcome to join us again.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and everyone on the stream. Please feel free to give us those feedback on what you're seeing and using with the updates with OneDrive and SharePoint. And I promise I'm listening. So keep that feedback coming. Jay, Nicola, thank you so much for having me. This was very, very fun.
Thank you for joining us. Thanks everyone for joining, and see you around. Jay, thanks for being
all next time.
Again, wonderful co-host.
See you at Ignite, and stay tuned for the November update, because we're not done for the year. Yes, we're slowly winding down towards the end of the year, but we're not done. We have exciting, cool stuff coming up in November that we're going to announce at Ignite, and then the update in November is going to be great as well. So we're not done. After that, December, we'll have a couple smaller Christmas presents, and then we'll be back, I think, in February, where that is where the mother load is coming, and that's Christmas is this year is in February.
Okay.
It's postponed.
We'll remember that.
But February is where you want to go. But for the rest of the year, November is still going to be good. December is going to be great. And then we'll disappear on you for a little bit and be back guns blazing in February.
Yeah. Let us take a breath.
Yeah, exactly.
During Christmas.
We deserve it at some point.
Okay, guys. Thank you everyone for joining, and see you next month.
Thanks all.